you get this money, it will not be in a lump sum. You will be forced to, obviously, or compelled to buy an annuity product that will sustain you, with that net replacement ratio being the goal, as Uputumkululi was saying. So retirement pot, 2/3 of your contribution goes towards it. When you leave work, you will have to buy an annuity product, and this is what you are compelled to do. It's only if the money that is in that pot is 165,000 Rand or below that you will get it as a cash lump sum. So the second pot is your savings pot, which in terms of your contributions, 1/3 of your contributions goes into that pot. So that means if your contributions are 1,000 Rand, 333 Rand goes into your savings pot. Now, this is the money that is going to be accessible to you while you are still employed. And when you leave work, you get access to that money as a lump sum, right? Should you wish to take it as a lump sum. So that money will be accessible to you. If you're in a provident fund, it is that save money in the savings pot together with money in your vested pot, which is your old money, right? So as I've explained, that when you leave employment before you turn age 55, you will have access to this money. So you don't have to wait until you turn 55 years old. You will have access to it as and when you leave employment. Should you choose to take this money, it's accessible to you readily. Right, so it's 1/3 only. It's 1/3 only that is going into this pot, and that's what you'll have access to when you leave employment. So we will talk later on about what the impact or the effect of you accessing this money on a yearly basis, what effect it has when you ultimately have to leave work. All right, so money in your savings pot when you begin with, before you even get your first contributions in, which technically the first contributions for September 2024 will only come into the fund in October, around the 7th. And then people might want to apply from the beginning of September. So what is going to happen is there will be seed capital that is planted into your, or transferred into your savings pot from your old money or your vested pot. And that amount is 10% of what you have, but that 10% is kept at 30,000 Rand. So what this essentially means is that from anyone that has below a fund credit of below 300,000 Rand, 10% will be applied. From 300,000 onwards, it will be 10% of 3,000 Rand. But if you have more than that in your, as your fund credit, you will not get 10% of that money. So it will be kept at 30,000 Rand. So the examples would be, if your fund credit right now is 200,000 Rand, your seed capital at 10% will be 20,000 Rand. If your fund credit is 100,000 Rand, your 10% will be 10,000 Rand. And that is going to be your seed capital at 10%. 300,000 Rand is a fund credit. So 10% is 30,000 Rand. So your seed capital will be 30,000 Rand. If you have 500,000 Rand, 10% is 50%, but that is not what is going to be used as seed capital. It is still going to be 30,000 Rand. Even if you have 1 million Rand and above as your fund credit, you will still only get 30,000 Rand as your seed capital. So as and when you decide that you want access to this money, it's only once every 12 months. And that 12 months runs concurrent with the tax year, which is the 1st of March up to the 28th or 29th of February each year. So you can't withdraw or access money in May, for an example, and then once again in October, you go back and you access that money. You have to wait until the tax year is complete, and you can only apply from the next year onwards, which is on the 1st of March moving forward. Now, the minimum amount that one can access from their savings pot is 2,000 Rand, and the maximum amount that one can access is 30,000 Rand. So it is between 2,000 Rand and 30,000 Rand. So those are the minimum and the maximum that you can access. Right. So when you do access this money, what you have to keep in mind is that it is going to be taxed at your marginal tax rate. So you will go and, for an example, apply for 30,000 Rand. And if you are taxed at 20%, so what this essentially means is that your 30,000 Rand will be taxed at 20% if that's your rate, and 20% of 30,000 Rand is 6,000 Rand. So it means the receiver of revenue will be taking 6,000 Rand. So you are now left with 24,000 Rand as an example. Also, another cost that you need to consider is that the administrators will also take an administration fee, which will range from 100 Rand to 600 Rand, depending on the amount that you will be taking. So essentially, you will see your fund credit decreasing by 30,000 Rand, but what comes into your bank account or into your pocket is actually going to be much less than that, because it will be minus the tax as well as minus the administration fee that is going to be charged. So in a sense, in as much as we are being given access to this money, but you can see with the tax at this punitive scale that you are being discouraged from taking this money. So essentially what this means is that this must be your last resort, that you go and take this money. And another consideration that people might not have factored in is that when you take this money where it's being invested, right, you are basically depriving yourself of growth and your compound interest effect. So I did a quick sum based on 30,000 Rand. So if you were to leave 30,000 Rand in your fund invested at, say, 10% growth for the next 20 years, so 30,000 Rand potentially would have grown to 210,000 Rand. So if you're going to be doing this every year, you are basically depriving yourself of the returns. If the return is roughly 10%, you are depriving yourself of growth of around 210,000 Rand for the 20 years that the money would have been invested. So it's important that people really consider this as a last resort. Right. So when you apply for this system from an administrative point of view, you need to make sure that all your information is up to date. The administrator has got all your details as required, so that it will make it easier for you to basically go and apply. Right. So once again, we reiterate that it's legislation and it cuts across the board. So it's not for provident funds or for pension funds. Also, it applies to retirement annuities as well. So if each and every product that you have will have the same legislation applying to it with the different thresholds. People that will be exempt from this or will not be going into this new reform by default are people that were aged 55 as of the 1st of March 2021. So those people or employees will have an option to choose to get into this two-pot system or not. So they'll be given 12 months to decide. If after 12 months they haven't decided, they'll obviously be excluded. But if they decide that they want to be part of the two-pot system, it's voluntary. So then they will be allowed to come in. And also in terms of accessing your money, those people that are already 55, they do not have to worry if they belonged to a provident fund. They will be getting all the monies in all the three pots, which is your vested pot or your old money, your savings pot, and your retirement pot. So they will be getting that as a lump sum should they choose to take that money. Another thing that you will be allowed to do is to transfer money from your savings pot or from your vested pot into your retirement pot, but you will not be allowed to transfer from your retirement pot or from your vested pot into your savings pot. So your savings pot can transfer into your retirement pot. You can also choose to take money from your vested pot and transfer it into your retirement pot. And that way you will make the money that you'll be taking to buy an annuity even greater than what it would be ordinarily if it was only just your contributions that go in moving forward. But once again, let me reiterate, if the money in your savings pot combined with money in your retirement pot, that 165,000 Rand threshold that I referred to, plus money in your savings pot, if that money is not above 247,500 combined, you will not be compelled to buy a retirement annuity. However, you will get that money as a lump sum should you wish. So I think I should end there for now, and let's allow the panelists to engage with what I've just said. I've tried to simplify it as much as possible. Thank you.
All I can say, my brother, is yo. I really am hoping that people will take this very seriously and think about what it means. So friends, we are now, I think we have sorted out our Facebook connection. So we are going to ask our host to port us from YouTube to Facebook, because most of our viewership is actually on Facebook. But Olani, thank you so much. You know, there are a few things that you have mentioned that I would like for us to talk about. You are talking about those who have reached 55 years of age and above. So are you saying that those ones are not compelled to take the 30,000 rands? Unlike us, those who are still below that 55 years.
Okay, so essentially the objective is to save towards retirement. Yeah. So once you turn age 55, you already reached retirement age. And so when this law was promulgated, or the first reforms in 2021, you're already exempt because you've attained retirement age. So for you, you will not get into the system by default. However, you will be given an opportunity to say, well, I want to be a part of this, because in your case, you still have to wait until you leave employment to access your money. So for you, you're very close to retirement. So you will wait until then for you to exit, well, until you leave employment. But for everyone else, right, you now can access your money while you are working. So that is why people at 55 are just given a 12-month window for them to decide if they want to wait until they get their money when they leave employment, or if they're very eager to access the money, they will then opt into the system, right? But that is obviously a maximum of 30,000 Rand every 12 months.
Yeah. But you've also raised a very important point about, because you are given an opportunity to take 30,000 rands, to withdraw 30,000 rands from your retirement plan, it does not mean, it does not mean that you are receiving 30,000 rands. So that money will be taxed, and administrators will also further tax you because they will want their administration fee. So do we have the numbers? So out of the 30,000 rand, how much will I be able to take home?
All right, so we obviously all tax differently, right? So it's marginal tax, so it's based on your income. So other people will be taxed at a lower scale, other people will be taxed at a larger scale. So it's important that maybe before you apply, you basically get the exact sums as to how much will be taken by the revenue services. And also from an admin perspective, you getting claims as we speak of people that withdraw and leave employment. So with more claims now being added, it's extra work for the administrators, and that is why they will charge. So I think these are all things that are discouraging you from taking this money. However, if you feel that you pushed into a corner and you have no other choice, then you have the accessibility to the money. But people must know, a lot of people think that just because the legislation has been promulgated, you are then compelled to withdraw. You are not compelled to withdraw. You can just leave that money in your savings pot, and it obviously grows much quicker because of the compound interest effect if there's more of it. But every time you deplete, you're just looking at it at face value as being 30,000 Rand going off. But like I said, if you leave that at 10% growth for the next 20 years, it would have become 210,000 Rand.
Yeah.
The next year you do the same thing. So for the next 20 years, that would have been 210,000 Rand. So if you withdraw 30,000 Rand consecutively over 3 years, you've taken away 90,000 Rand from your fund credit. But over a 22-year period, you've robbed yourself of about 630,000 Rand.
Yeah, that's almost 1 million. I mean, and that's a lot of money. Thank you so much, my brother. I think at this moment, I would like to maybe bring Brother Lungisile in, who is going to give us the theological perspective. Brother Lungisile, welcome back. I want us to talk about something that you said. You said the majority of South Africans are Christians. And on this platform, I think it is safe to say to focus on that religion more than others and see what it says. And one thing I am glad that you're going to be talking about is John Wesley's perspective on money. So what sayest thou about the two-pot system?
Thank you so much. I think I just want to throw some statistics, and I think before we start, just to may the meditations of my heart and what I'm going to say be acceptable unto you, my Lord, my Savior. Amen.
Amen.
I'm just going to throw some statistics, and say that in South Africa, the members of the ZCC are over 12 million. The members of Shembe are over 8 million. And I think within the Methodist Church, we are over 5 million and others. But my talk will be more reflecting from the Armenian point of view, which is the Wesleyan perspective. And please forgive me, I will try and be simpler and just read this. And I think, and also I want to put a disclaimer that this is not financial advice in any way, but it is a theological reflection. And I want to use the epistemological reasoning of John Wesley, because he spoke about this 250 years ago. And it is still relevant. And I will try and read. And I promise I will provide this writing so that people can read on. And if they have questions after that, they can engage on. The Wesleyan reflection on Wesley, the use of money in relation to the two-pot system, linking it with the John Wesley Manifesto and the Communist Manifesto. The use of money still makes pure common sense even after 286 years with our times and economic context, especially in the South African context. We all understand that common sense is not common to everyone, and ignorance is a bliss. I will try and bring some context and contextualization on some of the important synopsis, borrowing from Wesley, but also using our African people like Professor Takato Mufokeng, Professor Musala, Professor Welile Mazamisa, Ernest Batman, and many other theologians that we've had in South Africa around this matter. And I want to begin by reading what John Wesley read. Luke 16, verse 9. I tell you, use the wealth to gain friends for yourself, so that when it is gone, you will be welcomed into eternal dwellings. The right use of money is very important to Christians and human beings in general. Many think about it from an uninformed position, with lack of financial literacy and financial wellness in the context of the two-pot system that the previous speaker spoke about, and what Putumkulule will be speaking on from the money rehab point of view. Money should be regarded as a gift from God for the benefit that brings opportunities and it offers for doing good. It can feed the hungry, clothe the naked, and we can use this using the reference of Matthew 25, where the care of the widow, but also I want to bring a critique that Prof. Welile Mazamisa uses around the Good Samaritan, where he says that if that Good Samaritan had no money, they would not have been able to do that. Now, in this context that has been put, if someone had withdrawn this 30,000 over 2 years and having lost over 600,000 in a space of 20 years from a compound interest, in this case, they would not have been regarded as a Good Samaritan. But furthermore, also, we have a problem when we look at what Prof. Musala uses when he speaks about the parable of the talents around the one that kept one and the others who then went to the stock exchange. Sometimes you find that we do not understand that this stock exchange do not benefit us as Black people, because we are majority, and when you look at the Johannesburg Stock Exchange, it is still owned by people that came through the sea in South Africa. I'm bringing this in the context of the issue of money and how money should be handled in this case of the two-pot system. This could be another way of ensuring that Black people are impoverished, because people that have got money are not affected by this. As we understand the background of the two-pot system, it is something that was discussed by the unionists. And we'll find that most of these unionists are the ones that are staying in these suburbs and earning a lot of money. Some of them do not even understand financial literacy. If we could recall in some of the news that have been said, unfortunately, I do not have lawyers, so I would not be in a position to mention names, but there are articles that were put in around some unionists who are not able to manage money and are in trouble with different facilities of government entities. I'm raising this on the fact that our people are poor. They do not they provide a temporary solution to a permanent problem. And then I now want to bring the context of John Wesley. John Wesley, when he speaks about the use of money, he raises 3 points, namely, gain all you can without hurting either yourself or your neighbor in soul or in body. If you read John Wesley's sermon, it's Sermon 50. Each of these points have got 8 points, sub-points that explain this. Because of time, I will not be in a position to explain that, but I would encourage people that they must go and read about it. Every point that I'm going to explain, there is a subsection of 8 subtitles that explains how do you gain all you can. And in gaining all you can, I will then link it with rule number 1 of the rules of the helper, which says never be unemployed and never be caught traveling. We recently found that 33% of people in South Africa are unemployed. So therefore, there is a problem. John Wesley then further says, save all you can. He further explains whether for your children and creating a legacy. Now, the question that I would ask is that by us withdrawing, will this be a position that creates a legacy for the future generations, understanding the hymn 258 in the Xhosa hymn books that says, Jerusalem ikhaya lam, whereas we understand that there are people who are experiencing Jerusalem, if that Jerusalem exists, within South Africa, and they will still experience Jerusalem in heaven, whilst us, we do not even know what Jerusalem looks like because we are always in poverty. So therefore, I submit that let us then follow this principle and save all we can and not be caught up in a position of withdrawing. Lastly, give all you can, whether you give to the poor. But then this could also be a challenge, understanding the contextualization of the theology that is brought within the South African context. I will make an example of the charismatic churches like the Mboro, like the pastor that went to Malawi, where you will find people giving all their money and pensions to support one individual and lose all their money. Now, this is a challenge that we might find. People are going to get this two-pot system and they will say that they have been given this money by God, and they will take 10% of that money and give it as tithing, and it will not do what they are supposed to be doing. Therefore, it will miss the point again. I will come into that. Now, I want to contextualize this sermon within our space. For example, within the South African context, we've got a level of unemployment. I strongly feel that understanding that our government wants to get votes, they use this because they know that our people are poor. My view as a Wesleyan is that understanding that John Wesley, in the Communist Manifesto that he wrote 200 years before Karl Marx and Engels were born, which is, I always say that the Communist Manifesto is a byproduct of John Wesley Manifesto, and I always argue that they are cousins from different mothers. They talk about bridging the gap between the poor and the rich. I strongly feel that this will not bridge that gap. But this is coming from a class point of view, which is from a working class. And it doesn't speak to the poor people in our rural areas that are unemployed. They are like, even if you were to do the statistics, you will find that 180 billion is going through spaza shops, and that money is not taxed. And what the government can do, or the churches can do, in this case as a form of education, through empowerment and using rule number 1 of the rules of the helper, will be to empower people to run those spaza shops so that people can be sustained and people can live a better life and understand how to save. As I'm about to conclude, there's few things that I feel that have not been spoken about, and I want to make an example. I think I have put it here. If you find someone that is earning 7,000 after deductions, and this person would save at least 500 a month. Let's say you've got someone who's been earning a net income of 7,000 for 15 years, and they save 500 rands a month for 15 years, that is 180 months. That will give that person 90,000 without compound interest. I strongly feel that the treasury, the churches, and NEDLEC, and everyone who has got power should be promoting those kind of things of savings, because that will enable people to have better money. Now you've got this person, he is going to get 90,000. That is not going to be taxed because he has been putting 500 a month for 15 years. That is equating to 90,000, excluding compound interest. Lastly, there is also the issue of tax-free savings account, which has been brought into. The government is only speaking about, or the industry is speaking about two-pot system. They are not talking about tax-free savings account. I want to bring this information that is available, and I will share it here. It says that if when your child is born, you put in 3,000 rand, which is the tax-free savings account, 36,000. For it takes 13.8 years to reach the maximum of 500,000. In 15 years, that 500,000 that you contributed would have been 1.5 million. If you keep that money up to 30 years, when your child turns 30, you will be giving them 10 million. And this will allow your child not to put a tax-free savings account for themselves, but for their children. Those are the things that I think the financial industry should be promoting from a theological point of view. And these are some of the things that we should be hearing from our pulpits. But then I would argue again that sometimes we might not hear these things, because if you read what John Whitfield said back then, he said, I quote, to John Wesley when he met him, you know, Wesley, the problem that you are experiencing is that you've got dead people standing in pulpits, preaching to live people. Go out there and tell the people the good news. And I think the good news that we should be bringing is financial wellness, to ensure that our people are not impoverished, they are better off, and they understand that money doesn't go on trees. And there's a lot of things that can be done. And I think lastly, what I want to put and say is that, and I want to quote what was said by Tatumbulelo Bikwana back in 2003 at the BMF student chapter. He said, black men, why are you standing? The robots are green. And I want to close and say that if we do follow the necessary things and understand the delayed gratification, we might have a better understanding of finances, because no one else will think for you but yourself. We need to change the way and the lenses of how we look at money and our relationship with money. Amen.
Amen. Amen. Take me back. I am planning to have children next year, right? Whether I'm Tenga, whether I'm Tunga, whether I'm a co-creator with God. So you are saying to us, if someone earns 7,000 rands per month and they put away 500 rand per month for how long?
For 15 years, that is 180 months.
For 15 years, I'm calculating for my future children. That will be 10 million.
That will be, no. That's a different one. No, that one is 3,000. That one is 3,000 for over 13.8 years, and you reach the maximum of 500,000. And then 500,000. It's just mathematics. And unfortunately, we've got a problem in South Africa because our government introduced maths lit. So sometimes people now apologies for that. But what I'm trying to say,
please come back.
Yeah,
you are saying a parent who earns 7,000 rands a month.
No. That those are two different contexts. That was the
let's
first
start with
one.
this one. Let us start with this one. A parent earns 7,000 rands a month.
Yes.
They put away 500 rands per month for 15 years.
Yes.
Is our Bamalin.
That will be 90,000 excluding interest.
90,000 excluding the compound interest.
Yes.
That's one. The second option is a parent puts away 3,000 rands a month.
Yes.
For how many years?
For 13.5 years.
Okay. And then that will be
1.5 million.
My children buzz over, right?
And then if you keep that money for 30 years compoundingly, your child would have probably 10 million, but then you need to factor inflation. But I must also put a disclaimer again that this is just a calculation. I am not a financial advisor.
No, thank you so much. But Xolani, you want to come in there?
Yeah, I think just to give clarity to the 3,000 Rand that Lungisile is referring to. So if you have a tax-free savings product, the maximum amount you can put in that is going to be tax-free is 3,000 Rand a month, which is 36,000 Rand over a year. And over a lifetime, it's 500,000. So that's what he's referring to with that 3,000 Rand example.
Yeah. No, you know, there are so many young people who do not know these are the basics. And many young people think you have to create magic in order for your children to be set. But what you guys are doing is exactly what we want to do, to speak to young people, so that, because the questions that I'm asking are questions that young people would ask, like, what do you mean 500 Rand? 500 Rand. And many young people do have 500 Rand. If you look at the lifestyles that we live, you know, on a weekly basis, sometimes a person just needs to look at their lifestyle and do a lifestyle change, because chances are over every weekend, we are buying nice things, going out, we go into nice places where they say there's an entry fee of 100 Rand, 200 Rand. After that entry fee, we buy nice drinks. And then before you know it, every weekend you are spending, let's say, give or take 1,000 Rand. So what you guys are saying, in order for us to try and start generational wealth, we do not need to be millionaires. We do not need to have millions, but we can create millions by simply putting away as minimum as 500 Rands per month over a 15-year period. And that, I want to believe that it is something that is doable. But Lungisile, you also spoke about the people that are on our pulpits, and I do not want us to get there. I would like to say, how do we talk about finances on our pulpit without demonizing wealth? I think as Christians, we demonize wealth because we equate it to prosperity gospel. But talking about money is actually not prosperity gospel. It is the idolization of money that makes it prosperity gospel. So how do we, as preachers of the good news, talk about finances in a manner that any Tom, Dick, and Mary can understand, especially in line with the 2-point retirement system?
I think from that, I'll use a simple example. If you were to read the story of Joseph and understand what he did in the 7 years when in preparation for drought, there are many kinds of texts that are available. And I think also what can also be done is linking our theological training with financial literacy and working hand in hand with financial institutions, because most of these people that sit in the pews have got transactions with banks, with insurance companies, and all those kind of things.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Budlungisile, for that. And I reiterate, this is not financial advice. In order for you to get financial advice, please sit with your financial advisor who is qualified to give financial advice. We are just brothers and sisters in Christ, sharing the knowledge of Christ. Budmkululi, let me come to you. Welcome once again, and I see that you have found your spot. And I know that you're going to be reflecting on the plan as far as this two-part retirement system is concerned. Do you think it is advisable for us to withdraw this money?
Okay, so before I delve into that, right? We just need to, so I'm like burning because the things that he's talking about are some of the real issues that we are experiencing out there. I think he touched on as well an industry that is also looking after itself before the client, you know? So it's like, who do you put first, you know, in all of this? But anyway, just to go back on why retirement, and I think you also touched on it a bit, the 500 concept, the 1,000 and so on. And, you know, sometimes I speak to a lot of people who they will always say, no, the cost of living is too much and we can't afford things. But every second day is scooter delivering, Mr. D. It's delivering. And there you are paying for the burger, the takeaways at cost plus 30% plus delivery fee and so on. So it's like quite often for a person to get to a place where they want to change, it's like, I have to be sick and tired of this whole thing that I've been experiencing. And if I want the change, then I will make a change, you know? Why retirement funds? So the reason why government, I mentioned earlier, why government is forcing people to invest is because people don't invest, whether either as a lack of knowledge or whatever it is. But the simple truth is that if you leave people to invest and save on their own, they just simply don't. I mean, how many people around this room you can say, are you able to sit in your bank account with 100,000 rand and not think about ideas of what I can do with that money? And the honest truth is,
that money
exactly,
will be gone.
Exactly. And that is the main issue that we have. Every one of us, we can simply make the retirement industry irrelevant. If we were to go and say, the retirement industry saves and invests in a certain way. If we go and basically mirror that way that they also save and invest, and we don't eat the seed that we are planting, right? So the money that we invest, I'm going to refer to as the seed. You are planting a tree. That tree will grow and then fruit will grow. You can enjoy the fruit that is being produced by the tree, but leave the tree alone. Do not eat the tree. And if you can do that, you will simply make the retirement industry irrelevant, right? Now, one of the reasons why people find saving for retirement difficult is that you are throwing money into this hole and there is no feedback loop. So if you put money away or you are investing, you're planting a seed, and the only time that you are actually going to see a benefit is now when you are retired and you start drawing income or you take a lump sum and so on. If you are 20 years old, then I'm going to tell you that you have to wait 40 years before you start benefiting from this retirement investment. You're simply not going to, buy it. And that is why people do not stay invested. It's as simple as that, right? So it does not take a lot. So, I mean, a lot of us who work, we are getting salaries every month, right? We are working, there's a feedback loop that comes back and says, you are working, here's your money. Here's the reward. So you are getting paid every month for 12 months in a year. So why must you wait 40 years before you see that feedback loop, right? And from there, I believe that if a lot of people were to start saving and investing on their own, and they were to see that feedback loop, every month, either you are saving into your bank, it's giving you interest. Focus on growing that interest. You are buying shares on the stock exchange. Every quarter, every 6 months, you'll get dividends. Focus on growing those dividends. If you can have that, then you can basically make the retirement industry irrelevant. Remember earlier when I said a good retirement or a comfortable retirement is when you are able to earn 75% of your salary. What stops you from building it now while you are still working and you are alive? I think that's the literacy that we need to focus on. And I think the problem that we have is that, I mean, there's a lot of people who deal with advisors, and I do speak to a lot of people, and the common thing that we get is, I've put in so much money, but right now, the value of that money I've put away is less than what I've put in if I sum it up. And that's because a lot of the money is disappearing to fees, administration costs, this cost, that cost, and these fees and everything. You know, so that is something that we need to look at and educate ourselves. I like what Uputlungi said again, to say, make as much as you can, save as much as you can. And then once you get into a position where you see the rewards of that, I believe that as well. There's this thing that we call debt as well. I think if I just run you through some numbers, right? And I know everyone needs shelter, but this is just from a numbers perspective, pure numbers perspective. If you bought a 1 million rand house today at the current interest rate of 11.75% and you were paying it for 20 years, do you know that at the end of the 20 years, you would have paid 2.6 million rand, including interest? Now, that 1.6 million that you are sharing with the bank, you know, I understand, yes, we can't save up so much money to have enough to buy a house. But I'm just saying, you know, it's like, if you start putting some of that money away and it starts rewarding you, and you start seeing that behavior pick up, then, you know, it gains traction, it gains traction. Then we can say that retirement is actually not an age. It is a number. If you earn 10,000 Rand right now, you can retire with 3 million Rand. You will be able to use those investments to earn that 10,000 Rand a month. And you will be able to protect your money growing with inflation and so on, because you will only be drawing down about 4% of that money every year. So you'll be taking out 4%, maybe it's growing by 10%, 12%, sometimes it's 8%, sometimes it's a bit less than that. And, you know, but overall, on average, in the long run, you will be able to live and not run out of money. And I think to what Uputkolani was mentioning earlier on, and I feel that in educating individuals, this is one thing that a lot of people neglect, even, you know, the professionals that are in the industry. So one thing you need to keep in mind, that money, even when you get to retirement, you have not paid income tax on that money as yet. When you start earning an income, there are tax tables that say if you take out below a certain amount, you are just like a working person. You know, if you take out below, I think the current one, I'm not sure if it's around 80,000 or it has gone out. Yes, you won't pay interest, but as it goes up, you start paying interest on that money. And usually when we start to run these scenarios of, you know, do you save your money by yourself? You put it away into a retirement annuity? Do you put extra into your workplace pension fund and so on? We often neglect to talk about, now when you start living on the money, yes, you are getting 75% of your salary, but what is the tax rate that is applicable to that salary? So we just focus on the penalties now to say, yeah, if you take out money, you'll be getting penalized and so on. But we don't actually also bring in the picture at the end. Because one thing I know as well, and I mean, I do this as well. So once you earn money, right, and you pay tax on it, tax is the price of freeing your money up. Once your money is free, you can invest it into other investments. So there's different types of tax. There's dividend tax, where if you buy companies and they pay out dividends, you only get taxed 20%. Just 20%. Doesn't matter whether you're getting 100,000 or 10,000 or 5 Rand, you will be taxed 20%. So it's a flat rate, right? And then there's also the one where for example, if you buy a house for 1 million and you sell it maybe later on for 5 million, there's a what we call capital gains tax. Capital gains tax is also favorable. So if you are on the highest income tax bracket of 45%, you will pay a maximum of 18%. So that is more favorable than the money that you are earning and paying tax on that. So I think it's something that when we need to look at this holistic picture, we need to look at it and say, okay, cool. Yes, if I put money into retirement fund, I'm getting the tax back. But now you must remember, you are putting in 10,000, you are getting the tax for 10,000 back. That 10,000 grows into 100,000. That 100,000 is still taxable. So all your money that's inside your retirement fund is still taxable, right? And back to the starting block of what I said is, the reason why we have the industry of retirement is to remove the burden from government, also help people make sure that they've got some money when they retire. But I promise you, I would like to challenge each and every person around the room, or even a person that is at home, to say, try and save into an account that pays you interest, try and buy shares. You know, it doesn't have to get complicated. We are talking high level. You can buy simple things like the top 40 ETF, which gives you, in one, it gives you the top 40 companies in South Africa. You can buy the S&P 500, which gives you the 500 companies in America. You can buy there's a global one, which gives you like 9,000 companies. You can buy there's what they call the NASDAQ 100, which gives you the biggest 100 companies in the world. And basically just build on that. Don't eat the seed. Don't cut down the tree. Just wait for the fruit and see how rewarding it will be. The things that I'm talking about are things when I actually started money rehab, I actually put myself into a money rehab. And I wish we had more time. And, you know, I cannot tell you what a difference it has made in life, in my life, like financially and otherwise. And I mean, even now, when you are able to save all you can, invest all you can, and you are able to get rid of debt, you know, because debt is also what destroys our money, the value of our money. I mean, you buy something for 1 million and you end up paying 2.6 million. That's destroying your money. And we haven't even talked about inflation. You know, if you can do that, you'll see what a big difference it has made. And you know, there's this other concept that I see a lot with us people, but if you actually try and put it back into how we behave, it's actually irrational, right? So people will come and say, hey, I'm paying a lot of tax. Can I use a retirement annuity? I want to pay less tax. Great. You want to pay less tax, but have you ever said, I don't want a salary increase because I don't want to pay more tax? No one has ever said that. But investing does that. When you invest, you are actually also increasing your capability. So when you invest, you're also replacing yourself, but you are increasing your earning potential. So are you going to say no to earning more? No, no one says that. But if you do earn more, just put away the tax. A lot of people don't have a problem with paying tax. They just have a problem with paying tax from their pocket. The fact that the employers take the tax away before they pay us the money, we don't make noise. We won't say anything. But if we have investments, like for example, the interest, if I have investments that give me 50,000 Rand for the year, I need to make sure that I put away tax in order to, you know, to balance that out, because I earned extra money. I need to pay the taxman because that is the laws, you know, give to Caesar what belongs to Caesar. And a lot of us don't like putting money away. We'd rather try and find ways where we can reduce our tax liability. But when you reduce your tax liability, uznisha imali. You are saying, I am taking this money that I could be using now to better my life, and I'm, you know, deferring it into retirement. It's not a bad thing. But, you know, it's like design your lifestyle in such a way that you are able to fulfill your needs. There is really no honor in saving for retirement, but you are paying debts to make sure, or you are borrowing money to make sure that you are able to survive until the end of the month. Anyway, back to your question. I know that was a very long and winded answer, but back to your question. So I actually would have liked to, you know, project, but yeah, I'm having technology issues.
Okay.
So I looked at certain scenarios, right, to say, some people are saying, yeah, I want to take this money and I want to invest it elsewhere and so on. So I looked at most of the retirement investments, and about 90% of them, if we look at the past 10 years, what they have been returning on an average per year, they are ranging between 7 and 8.5%. 7 and 8.5%. And at the same time, if you look at some of the investments that if you had done in your own, you know, like if you had put money onto the S&P 500 or you had put it onto the NASDAQ 100, believe it or not, some of that money could have grown by as much as 25% per year. Some 15% per year. I'm talking about an average. Obviously, some years are higher, some years are lower, and so on, right? So what the scenario that I was looking at is, if you take the money and you take the tax penalty and you say, okay, let me go invest this money. Don't take this money and invest it into an investment where you are going to pay interest tax as well. You know, look at things that will benefit you. So for example, if you are in no position to have a tax-free, I think Uputlungi mentioned a tax-free. A tax-free, guys, the power of a tax-free. If you have, let's say you have 3 million in there and you take away, let's say you give yourself a salary of 300,000 per year. From that 300,000, guys, that is tax-free. Like, it is absolutely tax-free. So if anything, I would actually put that as the number one tool that you should be using for retirement over and above what we have in the current landscape. It's just unfortunate that the deductions for tax-free accounts, they are not legislated. It's the pension funds, those investments that are legislated, and you know, they are written into things like employment contracts, or when you take up a retirement annuity, you make a contract to say, I'll be contributing this month, I'll be contributing this much every month, and it will increase by 10% and so on. But really, we need to look at what is available much wider than that, and that will have a benefit for you before you get to the retirement stage. You know, like I said, for example, if I had gone and taken that money and paid the tax and invested it in the S&P 500 or the NASDAQ 100, I would have taken between 10 and 15 years to actually draw level with that money being in the retirement product and growing at the rate that it would have grown at. And now at this stage, you also need to look at the money that's still in the pension fund. It's still subject to income tax because you haven't paid income tax on that. You're still going to wait. This one that's outside, now you've actually gone and changed the structure that you're being taxed on, because you've moved from an income tax level, which is up to 45%, and you've put yourself onto capital gains tax, which is maximum 18%, and also that dividend tax of maximum 20%. You know, I usually say rules of thumb, yes, they are very dangerous to follow, but certain rules of thumb are that if I were to look at the tax brackets, is that if you are on a tax bracket, like if we use example, the dividend tax of 20%, right, as a yardstick, is that if your tax bracket is below that, look at increasing your income. And then if you are above that, then you must look at investing as much as possible, because it puts you onto a more favorable tax situation. The other one, just finally, that I just I actually forgot it now. But if I do remember, I'll raise my hand. But yeah, I think as Olani said, don't rush to take that money though, because the honest truth is that a lot of the people, or the majority of the people that have this thing, is that if you had given them the money and said, please save and invest yourself, they just simply would not have done it. So if you are one of those people, try and just leave it as is and stay away from it. You know, like just let it be, like just leave it the way that it is.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Puti. You know, the three of you, I feel like we need to have another conversation about the very same matter, because I mean, we are already seeing people saying, I've got debts to pay, so I'm going to take this 30, and they're planning for 30,000 rands. And it's important that they hear that even though you are eligible to withdraw 30,000 rands, you are not going to receive 30,000 rands at the end of the day. That's what Bukolane have said, is that that particular funds, that 30,000 rands is going to be taxed marginally, one, and then two, another one that we're not talking about is the fact that the administrators of that retirement fund, this means your Allen Grays, your Coronation Fund, all of those people are going to also charge you administration fees from 100 Rand. I'm not sure until how much, Bukolani. So those are funds that we are also not talking about. You said the admin fees are from 100 Rand until?
It's up to 600 Rand at this stage, but obviously your Allen Grays and your Coronations will be your asset managers, whereas your administrators will be different companies that do the actual administration.
Okay.
I'm trying not to mention any names, except for but we're in consulting, so we're safe.
Yeah. No, they're not paying us for publicity. So that is very important. And I know if my rule of thumb is still on point, what is the non-taxable amount that you can take? Is it 27,500 per annum?
So when it comes to withdrawing from your retirement fund, when you leave employment, this is before retirement age. So the tax-free portion is 27,500, and on retirement, it's 550,000 that is not taxed. So the first 550,000 is not taxed, whether you are retrenched or you actually retire. So that's the difference in terms of taxation.
Yeah. So I think what I'm hearing all three of you concur on is, if you can, as much as possible, leave that money alone. Because it sounds to me that this is a carrot that the government is dangling in front of a struggling society in South Africa, a society that is indebted, a society that is not making enough money as it is, a society that is not even able to retire, because but Mkhululi, you are saying only 6% of South Africans can retire comfortably. 94% of us are not able to retire comfortably as things stand. So now taking this money away, but Kolane had mentioned earlier on that taking part of this money away, it means that if you take 30,000 rands every year, you are basically taking away 210,000 rands in 20 years' time. So imagine if you take 30,000 rands for the next 3 years, it's 90,000 rands, and that is 630,000 rands in 20 years, my Jesus. How are we going to do this? How are we going to retire comfortably if we really fall into this trap? Can any of you say safely that it is a trap, this two-pot system?
So here's the thing, right? And it's which is the better evil, because people were resigning and taking everything. Now going forward, they will not be able to take everything. And I know that we like to demonize the SARS thing to say, no, this is just a way for them to make money. But to be honest with you, a relationship with SARS is help me help you, and then help you help me kind of relationship, if you study it to the core. Because like I said, they want people to have enough in retirement and to be self-sufficient, because then they don't have to pay grants. So I'm not going to say that it's a trap per se. So it's a double-edged sword. You know, it's a double-edged sword. And then there's one thing as well, Uputlungu, that mentioned about the gap between the rich and the poor, right? So the old system, and I'm hoping Upolani will confirm this for me as well. So the old system the people who were on the tax brackets above 34%, they could contribute money. And for example, let's say you are earning 2 million per year. You would contribute money, you'd save 45% on your income tax. And then when you resign and you take that money, the maximum that you would be paying, the penalty on that, would be 34%.
Oh.
So the old system was, I think, creating a gap in between, you know, the poor and the rich as well. I think that gap was getting bigger. In the new system, yes, you are getting taxed at your marginal rate, but it means that if you put in 1,000 rand and you saved 450, if you take out 1,000 rand, you're gonna be paying 450. I think that is the one place where I'm like, I love the system because it basically now equalizes across that gap or that incentive. And you know, it's not to say it didn't have penalties. So I was looking at the stats from SARS the other day where they were looking at income replacement. And you know, the people who are in that 45% tax bracket, they actually have lower replacement values that are less than the average, which tells me that those are the people in the high income jobs, high stress jobs. Those are people who resign, take the money, and they can go back. It's easy to do that when you're comparing someone who's earning 200,000 per month and someone who's earning 7,000 rand per month. It's chalk and cheese. The person on the 200,000, they are able to make things, they're able to make it through the month better because they got a bigger amount to work with. But I think the concept now, because now you're being taxed at your marginal rate, it kind of equalizes everything across the board. So I'm hoping that that gap between the rich and the poor will actually close over time.
Sure. Thank you so much. Gentlemen, it is now 19:47, and I'm hoping that we can close the conversation at 8 o'clock. So I am going to give all three of you an opportunity to give us your closing remarks. I'm stressed. What stresses me the most is, one, what seems as if people do not understand the pros and the cons of this two-pot system. Two, how some of us are saying it's a two-pot system, but if you really look at it, it now becomes a three-pot system. As Bukolan have said, now we talk about the vested pot, the savings pot, and then the retirement pot. So it's now where does each pot belong? And also we cannot talk about retirement and not talk about the unemployment rate in South Africa. Because who's retiring when we are unemployed? Because surely when we are unemployed, we are not retiring. So now we are adding to the 94% of South Africans that cannot retire comfortably, because the majority of us are just not going to have that 75% of our final salary. So Brother Kalani, can I start with you? Your final words, maybe even a comment or two about what we have already spoken about.
So thanks. I think in closing, obviously, retirement industries exist. The industry exists because we don't have the discipline. In a perfect scenario, if we all had this discipline to basically save money and invest, we'd be following, the advices that we get given, or the advice that we get given. But when you are forced, it's easier. It's a culture. It's not a very good culture and not a very good picture in South Africa that we don't save. And one might argue that we might not earn enough to save in the first place. But for those people that are fortunate enough to be working and have retirement funds in their companies, so for those people, we exist, and we need to make sure that they make the most of what is at their disposal. It's correct that people should look at other means of investing, so that when there's a rainy day, you know where to go, as opposed to eating into your retirement fund, because that assists in you getting that net replacement ratio, which helps you retire comfortably. So that's all I would say from my side, and that in as much as you want to be, as philanthropic or help other people, remember that you cannot pour from an empty cup. So make sure you've got something to pour out of, so that will be my closing remark. Thank you.
Sure. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Bukolani, for your inputs. We really, I just wish young people would listen to all of these advice that have befell on this platform this evening, and start making up their own minds. Read as much as you can, seek advice as much as you can, rather be over-informed than under-informed, because then you make the correct decisions. WesleyGuildSA, your closing remarks.
Thank you. I think my closing remarks, I'm going to try, I always try and put controversial things that get me into trouble.
So
in
don't.
the things in the things I say. Those that are fortunate to be employed, can they follow the John Wesley principle that we have outlined? And also understand that there is another one that is coming that we have not spoken about, which Upukolani and Uputumkululi knows about, where the government wants to touch on the prescribed assets for the infrastructural development of the country, which was done back in the 1948. So if you are employed, you do not have an excuse not to have an emergency account. And I think I like what Ubutum Kululi and Usis Nozipo van Yarden always says. Saving is not about putting 5,000 Rand a month. It's not about putting 1,000 Rand a month. It's about putting what you can afford to create a culture of savings. And I think that's basically what I would like us to do as people in the chat. Let's let people have a culture of savings. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Because I love that, because a culture of saving has to do with two things: discipline and consistency. And before you get to the discipline and the consistency, you need the intention to save. If the intention is not there, the discipline is not going to be there, and the consistency is not going to be there. So I really, really, really would love that. And I think we need to publicize John Wesley's model as far and as wide as we can. Make as much, gain all you can, save all you can, and give all you can. But like Bukalani has said, you cannot pour from an empty cup. So you cannot start by giving before you start gaining. So thank you so much, WesleyGuildSA, and I'm grateful that you did not become controversial tonight. So thank you so much. But Nkululi, finally, your closing remarks, please.
I like controversy because it helps people think, and I enjoy talking to people who are open to, because we like to have this thing to say it's black or it's white, when in actual fact there's like 50 million of shades in between that we should be discussing or having a conversation about. So it's just, don't take offense from controversy. Just look, there's a saying that says, if it hurts you, look for the truth in it.
Yeah.
And if it's comforting, look for the lie in it. What are you missing out? So I think, like I said, my challenge to everyone is, yes, try not to touch the two pot, but also on the side, start and put away money, plant a seed that when it becomes fruit, you can start eating from. The wealth building process is simple, right? It says, use your income to buy assets, use your assets to buy luxuries. If you can keep it like that, I promise you, and you don't break that cycle, you will never go wrong. You will never, 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 ever go wrong. You know, stick to your needs, be intentional. That intention you spoke about, if you want it and it's really important to you, you will. It's just a matter of time. Let me not say you can. You will actually achieve it. So yeah. Thanks for the invite. It's been a pleasure sharing the stage with the esteemed gentleman and yourself. Yeah, all the best
Thank you
to
so
everyone.
much.
So let's come back with like better outcomes.
Yes, I thank you so much, Kululi. I love that. Use your income to buy assets and use your assets to buy luxuries. But what we do instead, we use our income to buy luxuries, and then we end up not being able to afford assets. And then we have children, and then we want our children to take care of us when we had an opportunity to start using our income to buy assets and building wealth over time, and then making sure that our children are comfortable. And then our children now, they carry on by watering the seeds that we have planted, while they reap from the seeds through the tree that now produces fruit. So thank you so much. Gentlemen, thank you for allowing me into your spaces. Thank you for availing yourselves so that we are able to feed off of your gifts and your skills. We know we do not pay, but we trust that wherever you are employed, you are getting paid enough so that you don't have to take your 30,000 rand. And if you are employed, you have employed yourself, may God continue to grow your business and the businesses that you're a part of. May you guys never get tired of teaching us. You know, over time, we are going to get there, especially as a Black people. We are going to get there over time. And I hope that we are going to have a follow-up of this conversation, because tonight we had a bit of some technological glitches. So I'm hoping that over time we are going to come back and say, what have we seen, especially after the 1st of September, to say maybe we can come back in November and say, how many people have taken from their pots and how many people listened to us and they left it. And maybe we can also find out those who have withdrawn from the two-pot system, what have they done with the money? Did they lobola with the money and then started their marriages on a negative? Or did they go and buy a second-hand car? Or did they go and pay for IVF? You know, for what have they done with the money? Or did they take it out of this retirement pot and found another investment stream? Did they get into the NASDAQ 100? You know, so we don't know. So I'm just hoping that we'll come back and say what has happened. May God bless you, and may God continue to raise you and to grow you, so that wherever you come into and whoever we come into contact with is is wiser just because they got into contact with you. Thank you so much. And with all of our brothers and sisters who joined us originally from the YouTube channel and then now on the Facebook, we thank you so much for being patient with us. You know, technology has a mind of its own, but we know that you will continue to be with us because knowledge is power. You would rather be over-informed than under-informed, so that you are able to make the correct decisions, not only for yourselves, but for your future generation. And I pray that we all may have the patience to start with the investment, not for ourselves, but for our children. We become patient. For us who are in our 20s, we do not see the 40 years of waiting as a long time, but we see it as a necessary time to plant the seed and water that seed up until we see our future generations living a much better life than we ever got to live. And may God bless you. And from me and the Wesley Guild SA crew, good night and God bless you. Bye.